Today I'm talking about show notes and how show notes can help increase discoverability, can boost your SEO, and can really give listeners a home base to find more depth information about all your episodes. To grow your podcast, your relationship with your audience needs to extend beyond audio. This is why show notes are vital to creating a long-lasting, successful podcast. And keep listening, guys, because I've got a free offer for you that's going to help you with your show notes. And I'm going to be dropping it in the middle of this episode. A lot of people have used this. I've given it away on my email list, and I want you to have it because it's going to be a great resource and make your show notes writing process easier. So stay tuned. That's coming up in a little bit. But for those of you that don't know, show notes can be found within the body of an episode on podcast listening apps. So when a podcaster publishes an episode in their hosting platform, there's a space to fill in show notes. Or some people call it an episode description, but these show notes get published along with your audio file. And as a podcaster, it's good practice to also post them to your website. More on that later, because that's going to be key for discoverability. Show notes are an episode description of your show where it goes more in depth to summarize what you were talking about in that specific episode. You're going to highlight your guest if it's an interview. You're going to link out to the various things that were talked about in the episode to give readers, interested readers, more places to go to learn more about you, to learn more about the topic, to learn more about the guest, etc. And if you don't know where to find them, which would be weird because it's kind of easy, you're going to go onto Apple and or Spotify and you just click on the body of the episode and the show notes will pop up and you can read what the episode is about. It's funny because my wife, only like maybe 2 months ago, she discovered show notes. She was actually really interested in the episode. The host told her to check the show notes, so that's what she did. Prior to that, she didn't really know what show notes were, and so that's just an example of how you can go more in depth if you're really excited about the topic or you're a super fan of the podcaster. That's a great place to go to learn more. Show notes are also important because people aren't going to memorize on the fly the things that you say in an episode. A lot of times podcasters will shout out like discount codes or websites they want to send people to, or links to products or links to articles. And if you're listening, chances are you're not going to like rewind and write all those down or try to memorize them. So show notes are a great place to put all that information so people can go to your main hub, your website, and get that information, find those links, click on those links, and get more involved in your podcast. Another reason why show notes are really important for your show is that they're going to help with SEO and discoverability. And what I mean by that is, well, first of all, what's SEO? So SEO is search engine optimization. And basically what SEO is how to get discovered more easily on the web, whether you're a podcaster, whether you have a website, whether you're an e-commerce company, whatever you are, discoverability online is key because as we know, there's billions probably of websites. In order for your website to be found by Google and possibly even your podcast, when people are typing in search terms related to your show, you're going to need well-written show notes. And so let's say this just came to my mind. Let's say you have a cooking podcast and you're doing a show. I've been craving sweets today. So let's say you have a cooking podcast and you did an episode on how to bake a chocolate cake. So your goal as a podcaster is when people type in how to bake a cake, with patience and the right strategy, the right keyword research, your episode or your website will ideally come up in like the top 10 for the terms, how do you bake a chocolate cake? Coming up on the front page of Google, you're going to get a lot more traffic to your podcast or to your website. What keywords are is just important words that are related to the episode that you're talking about. So for example, this episode, I'm talking all about show notes. And so the more I mention the keyword show notes or podcast show notes in my actual show notes that I'm going to write, the higher chance I have of this episode coming up when people type in what are podcast show notes into Google, or how do you write podcast show notes? Because I have a podcast about this particular episode, about this particular topic, and I'm going to be writing show notes about this particular topic, that'll get indexed by Google And ideally, in time, if the podcast gets big enough and if my website starts generating enough traffic, Google will bump that up to the front page. And so when people type in what are podcast show notes or a number of related keywords to the phrase show notes, ideally this would pop up. Let's say you have a crypto podcast and you do an episode on the FTX crash. So in your show notes, and this works with transcribing your podcast as well, which I've done an episode on in the past. In your show notes, you're going to want to put a lot of keywords related to the phrase like FTX crash or FTX crypto, FTX exchange, because that's a hot topic right now. It's more likely to come up because people are searching for that a lot. So Google's pulling it into search results. But the more that you can write around specific keywords like that, the more likely that you're going to have a chance to be discovered online. It does take time. It's not like you do an episode on how to bake a cake and like in a week, you're going to jump to the front of Google. This is a long game, guys. Podcasts are a long game. And over time, getting credibility with your show, getting credibility with your website. And yes, as a podcaster, you should have a website because that's where you can write these in-depth show notes. You can have a page for each episode, or it could be more simple. You can just have a basic website, but you need somewhere to put all this information so that it can get discovered. Oh, and if you're a podcaster that has a video strategy and you post video on YouTube, this is even better because like if you type something into Google right now, how to bake a chocolate cake. So about halfway down the front page, the videos pop up, and that's because Google owns YouTube. And so if you're also creating video content and putting your show notes like in your YouTube description, you're also going to have a better chance. This happened maybe in the last couple of years where when you search something, not only do articles pop up, but videos are starting to pop up. So ideally, you are going to have a video strategy for your podcast, you know, that YouTube content, the show notes on your website, the show notes in your podcast listening app. It just is more opportunities for people to find you, how they want. Maybe they'll find your video podcast through Google. Overall, a good thing to do. In order to be found online, your written content needs to be 300 words or longer. Google favors posts that are at least that long. So I recommend doing like 300 to 500 words. That's what we do at the Podcast Haven, and we found that that works well. It's enough to go a little bit in depth, but it's not so much that people feel like they're reading something that's dragging on. So how to actually write show notes, how to physically write them, what to include. It's best to have some sort of template. And if you're listening this far, I've got a freebie for you. I've got a template that I'm going to put in the show notes for this episode. Go to thepodcasthaven.com/podcast. And this is episode 25. It'll be the newest one. It'll have a thumbnail. It's going to be easy to find. That's thepodcasthaven.com/podcast, episode 25. All the other episodes are up there as well. But if you click on episode 25, within those show notes, there's going to be a template, a free template that you can download. Having some kind of template is important. Whether or not you love my template or you like to write your show notes in your own style, come up with a template. That way it's easier to format each episode. It's kind of easier to write them because you know what the layout's going to be. And readers will get used to like the way that you do them, the way that you describe episodes, your wordage, your vibe. And it's also important for the template to be the same because then when you put them on the website, everything just looks cohesive, looks more professional. But here are some things to include. And this is the way we do it. It's not limited to this. This is just meant to give you an idea. And if you go get that template, this will make more sense because you'll have a visual, but I'm just going to kind of read off how we do it. Okay, so top of the page, you're going to write your name, the guest name, if it's an interview, the guest's profession, and the title of the episode. Paragraph 1 is guest bio. So who's your guest? What are their accomplishments? Where do they work? A little bit about their career journey. Just a well-written bio. You want to honor the guest. You want to give them the respect that they deserve, and you want to make them look like an expert in whatever they're talking about. So write a good guest bio. 6 to 7 sentences is probably fine. Paragraph 2, a brief summary of the episode. Easy, maybe 6 to 7 sentences, more or less the same length as paragraph 1. Then bullet points. Bullet points are great because people just like to scan sometimes. They don't want to read full paragraphs. They just want to read the bullet points. I'd say 6 to 7 bullet points. Then here's where it gets interesting. We like to pull quotes from the guests. So I would say 3 memorable quotes. What's great about the quotes is you can tweet these out, or you can create a post with Instagram, maybe with the guest's headshot or some kind of graphic. These quotes can then be repurposed for other content that can go out on social media. Important to add links to websites, books, if they have an online course that they're selling, to the guest social media account, really anything that you want to send somebody to. Make sure you link to stuff on your end. Maybe you have a special that you're running. Maybe you're doing a launch. Maybe you want to link to your YouTube channel. Make sure you include your links in there as well. And this is most important, is ending with a call to action. So you could sign up to our email list to receive free weekly tips on podcasting resources. I usually do something like that. Or sign up for the email list to learn how to grow your audience. So you want a call to action at the end, because the dedicated super fans are people that have actually taken the time and they trust you. They look up to you. They want to learn from you. Give them a call to action. Send them somewhere that's going to benefit you. It's an energy exchange. You're putting out this content. You're giving listeners these resources and education and how to. And so hit them with a call to action to join your email list, or ask them to rate, review, and subscribe to your podcast. That's always important. The more ratings that you go up, the more trust that is built. People see that on Apple or Spotify. It just shows that the show has credibility and that people are digging it. But the ultimate goal of all this is that you want to get your audience as involved as possible with your ecosystem of content, services, and offerings. And then you can keep building a relationship, and eventually they might buy something from you. They might support you financially for being such a good resource. If writing show notes feels like a pain in the ass, and sometimes it can be, if you're not a good writer, you don't know where to start, or the template that I'm giving you don't like, head on over to capshow.com. And this isn't an ad or a sponsor or an affiliate, but capshow.com, CAPSHO. And what Capshow is like an AI copywriting system designed specifically for podcasters. So they can create your podcast promotional copy and your show notes in 10 minutes. And how it works is you go, you sign up, you upload an episode, and then their AI modeling system literally writes your show notes for you. They'll give you an episode title. They'll give you full on show notes. They'll give you a full blog post, which is going to help get that discoverability up. And there's other things they do, like email copy. If you have an email list and you're looking for a way to blast out this episode, a great tool for writing email copy, because that's a little bit different than show notes. LinkedIn articles, YouTube descriptions, transcription, get the episode fully transcribed. And again, all this is done through AI. And so it'll get you about 80% of the way there. Yes, you're going to have to make some edits. You're going to have to put some of the copy in your own voice on these things and just restructure things a little bit, maybe rewrite some sentences here and there. But honestly, it gets you about 80% of the way there. Takes care of all your writing. If you're not a writer, you don't feel like writing, check out Capshow. And it's really the easiest way to start marketing your podcast via written content. And that's Capshow, CAPSHO. That's it for me today, guys. Hopefully after listening to this, you've got some more information about what show notes are, the purpose of them, how to use them correctly, and why building a good show note strategy, a written content strategy around your podcast is going to reap dividends in the future. But be patient, put in the work, keep knocking out those episodes, keep pumping out content. And speaking of content, if you're digging my content, if you're loving my content, head on over to the podcasthaven.com. There you'll find our service offerings. We're a full service podcast production company. The blog is up there. These podcast episodes are up there. It's all easy to navigate, super cleanly laid out. So to learn more about myself and my company, the Podcast Haven, go to thepodcasthaven.com and you can get more involved with what I'm offering. And I will see you next week, guys. Thank you for rocking with me, and thank you for the support.